Welcome to Using Your Teacher Voice, episode 15. Last weekend I was at the Google Summit up in Franklin, Indiana, and the closing keynote speaker, she was using some examples about teaching that came from Tina Fey's book, Miss Bossy Pants. And they were talking about how teaching is like improv theater. And when she first started talking about Tina Fey, I'd already read the book, so the examples were I was familiar with, and it was kind of interesting, right? Because I had thought some of the same things already. And when I had read it, I was like, well, these things kind of have some correlation here, right? And then to hear her talk about it, really kind of, reinforced it a little bit, cemented, maybe kind of filled in a couple of little blanks for me. And so I just wanted to share those with you today. There are 4 rules to improv. The first one is say yes. So in improv theater, because everything's on the fly, everything's not, nothing is scripted, nothing is practiced, you just kind of go with it, right? And so when a person says something, you have to just go with it. You can't, you don't, what? I don't understand. Why would you say that? You don't question them for why they said it. And what you do then is you are just kind of taking what they give you as a background, as a base, as a starting point, okay? And so the rule is you always say yes. So for instance, if a person says, there's a monkey over on that tree, instead of, I don't see a monkey, then what you do then is you build on that. I do see that monkey. That's crazy. You start with what is given to you. Think about it in a classroom when a student comes up to you and you're talking about, whatever concept or whatever idea, and the student offers an example. So instead of shooting them down or, ignoring them or just kind of brushing that example to the side, use it as a starting point. Use it as a place to start building their content knowledge, because that's a starting point for them. They already said it. They have some sort of concept of it, right? If it's incorrect, then you have to shape it, but it's a starting point for them. It's a reference point for them to build on. The second point of improv theater is say yes and so you don't just accept the point, but then you build on it and you add more information to it. Okay, I see a monkey over there. I see a monkey in that tree, and then you would return by, I do see that monkey. It's eating the ice cream that we brought today. And so what happens then is you are adding to the conversation, you're building on the conversation, you're making it deeper and richer, and you're bringing it back around. Because again, if I've made a statement, now the other person is getting ready to respond to that, right? And so again, when the student says that, and you're discussing that concept and they bring up an example, then take that example, add to it, and then if you need to, start steering it back the way that you think that it needs to go, or to make it a little more correct. The third rule of improv is make statements, not questions. So I see a monkey in that tree, and then instead of you saying, is it eating our ice cream? What that does is that turns the table on the original speaker. Instead of being sharing, being building, being cooperative, you're just basically throwing it back on them. You haven't added anything to the conversation. You haven't added anything to the scene. And again, in teaching, when a student comes up to you and says, gives you an example or, they offer something, well, why would you say that? Well, not only does that kind of close down the communication a little bit by, taking it into a kind of personal level, but it also is then saying, well, wait a minute now, you're going to have to do the work for me. You have to explain that to me. So instead of, the student, kind of offering what they might see as an example or a definition or, some piece that they're adding to the conversation, you've basically asked them to rationalize and justify that. The final statement or the final element or the final rule of improv theater is that there are no mistakes. They're all just happy opportunities, wonderful, happy, joyous opportunities. And, how many times in our teaching career have we, somebody said something, it's like, well, I did not expect to see that, but you use those as building points. Okay, so you said that, let's go with that. And then you start building on it and using it as an example. It does a lot of things. First off, it kind of keeps the flow of the class moving forward. That's always good. But another piece that does is that it allows the students, again, they started with a thing that they believe is relevant. Okay, it's a starting point for them. It's a reference point for them. You're building on it. You're scaffolding it, right? But you're also making sure that student sees the legitimacy of that their idea has merit. And then, now, do you have to shape it a little bit? Maybe if it's way off base, okay. But, you use that, and maybe it's not your example, maybe it's not the way you would have explained it, but it's meaningful to them. So roll with it. Take it and go. I don't want to say that, education is all about performing, because I don't think it really is. I think that there is something to that with style, right? Keeping attention. But it's not about, just performing. But it's about using your performance to enhance the learning.